What's going on, everyone? Week 10 is upon us. We got a little buddy over here sitting in with me. Cosmo is going to sit down, hopefully, and behave and be a good boy while we go through these picks coming up for Sunday tomorrow. I'm so excited. Week 10 is here. So let's get to it. Here is our sheet or our whiteboard, I guess you could say. We got all the picks coming up right here. So we begin with the early morning game. Yes, it's another Europe game. The NFL has really upped their Europe games this year. This one is in Spain, and it is the Atlanta Falcons at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are favored by 6.5, and I think it's going to be a closer game than that. Buddy, I know you're teething, but this ain't anything to play with. I think it's going to be closer than that. And all these Europe games end up being wacky. I think the Colts ultimately end up getting the job done because I just trust them and just their team as a whole. But honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if Atlanta wins it. But I think it'll be closer. But I'm going to pick the Colts. I think they'll win, and it'll be about a field goal game. These lines this week, honestly, are pretty high. A lot of them that really kind of took me by surprise. So, again, I'll take the Colts to win, but I do not think it'll be 6.5. That's pretty high for my liking. All right, we got the Giants at the Bears. Now, my instinct tells me this is an upset, but I'm going to fight off what I think might be biased because I'm a Vikings fan and say that Chicago will get the win. But 4.5 also seems high to me because the Bears have played teams that they should be beating, to be quite honest, including that Baltimore team that did not have Lamar Jackson and they lost. Last week, you could argue they should have lost, or you could argue they should have won because they should have never been in that situation at the end of the game. But they barely snuck by Cincinnati. And now they're playing against the Giants, who I think their biggest strength is their defensive line. And obviously, Caleb under pressure, yes, he can evade, potential sacks. But how is he going to do if he's not rolling to his right and making that awesome throw that he can make to Odunze or whoever's running with him? In the scramble mode, and when he's off script, he's not great. So matchup-wise, I think actually the Giants here, their defense matches up relatively well against Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. So that's what makes me feel like this could be an upset, but I'm not picking that. I'm going to try to fight that off. Chicago is a better football team, I believe, than the Giants. So we're going to go Chicago. But 4.5 seems a little bit high. I would think this line would have been like 2.5. So I don't know where the 4.5 is coming from, but it is what it is. Buffalo at Miami. This one is pretty high with Buffalo favored by 8.5, but maybe not high enough because I think Buffalo's kind of been hot as of recently. They went to Carolina and blew them out and then got a win last week as well when they beat the Chiefs at home. And Miami, I think, might be a worse football team than Carolina. So for them to be favored by 8.5 seems a little on the low end to me but I guess it's a line, so you got to do that and tempt potential bettors with the tease. But, yeah, I think Buffalo's going to win by more than 8.5. I think this is potentially a 2-touchdown win for the Bills. All right, Baltimore at Minnesota. Now, Baltimore is coming off of a Thursday game, so they have extra time to prepare, to rest. Lamar is back. He played great against Miami. And I think Baltimore is about to start finding its stride. The Vikings, their mindset should be on developing J.J. McCarthy. I still, they had a great game plan and a great win last week in Detroit. But I don't trust that their defense can play as well. Even though they played well last week, they still gave up 24 points. That's still a lot of points. So it's the defense that I'm kind of questioning here with Minnesota. I think Lamar will be able to expose that. I've got Baltimore winning. 4.5 seems about right for the line, but I don't know which way to lean. I'll fight off the bias and say Baltimore will win by more than 4.5. Maybe it's like a 6-point game, like a 30-24 or something like that. Again, for the Vikings, how's J.J. McCarthy progressing? That's the most important thing. If the win comes with it, wonderful, but it's about J.J. McCarthy and about the future of the franchise. And I just think their defense has too many weaknesses. Derrick Henry, I think, could run all over that Vikings running defense. Yes, they stopped Detroit last week, but prior to that, they hadn't really done a good job stopping the run. I need to see it longer before I believe it. So I got Baltimore winning. Cleveland at the Jets. Cleveland's favored by 2.5, and I like that line. I agree with it. Cleveland's defense, I think, is going to just cause havoc for the Jets, and I think they'll be able to put up a couple points offensively. with Dylan Gabriel. I've got Cleveland winning this by more than 2.5. Maybe it's 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland wins an ugly game like 17-10 or something like that. New England at Tampa Bay. Great matchup. Super excited for this one. Tampa Bay's favored by 2.5. I think that's about right because I think we need to give New England some respect. But I think Tampa will win. And I actually think they'll win by more than 2.5. It might even just be a field goal game. But if it is a field goal game, I think it's just because the Patriots put together a drive at the end to kind of make it close. But I think Tampa's going to win convincingly, or at least pretty comfortably here. I think they'll be up multiple scores with 4 minutes left in the fourth or something like that. And then it's just a matter of, can New England make a backdoor cover? But I still got Tampa winning by more than 2.5. New Orleans at Carolina. This, I mean, honestly, is a big game for Carolina because they're 5-4. They're technically right there in the driver's seat for a playoff spot. Divisional game. They're at home. I'm going to give them some respect here and say that they're going to win and by more than 5.5 and start kind of setting themselves up for a little playoff push coming up. So I got Carolina winning this. They're at home, and I've got them winning by more than 5.5. So give me Carolina coming off a big win in Green Bay. Maybe they carry that momentum. Carolina by about a touchdown. Jacksonville at Houston. Jacksonville's favored by 1.5. I get the line, understand it. It's because Davis Mills is starting for Houston. But I just think that I can't trust that Jacksonville team. And I think Houston's defense is one of the best, if not the best in the league. I watched that Monday night game a couple weeks ago when they played Seattle, and they were keeping Houston, that defense was keeping them in the game. And it was CJ Stroud in the offense that couldn't do anything. So I'm going to say this is going to be an ugly game, but I think Houston's defense actually makes a play or two that swings the game and ends up winning it for Houston. It'll be maybe a 17-14 game, but I got Houston. It's kind of their season's on the line here for Houston. All right, Arizona at Seattle. This is where the lines get a little bit high. Seattle's favored by 7.5. And don't get me wrong, I get it. We give Seattle their respect. I mean, I've just had them number 1 in my power rankings because they needed to be in there, and I've been kind of sleeping on them. But 7.5 is a little high for my liking. I would have it 7.5 if Kyler Murray was starting, but Jacoby Brissett's starting, and he's been playing pretty good ball for Arizona, and they, as a team, have been playing good ball with him. They just came off that Monday night win in Dallas. They looked pretty good. So I still got Seattle winning this game. But actually, you know what? It's a divisional game. I'll take Seattle. I've been rude to them and disrespectful by not putting them in my power rankings. I'm going to pick them, but 7.5 seems a little high to me. I think Arizona keeps it closer than that. All right, Detroit at Washington. Detroit's favored by 7.5. I guess I was thinking this line was high, but realistically, it's not high. Detroit's going to have to bounce back. They lost to Minnesota. I think they'll be hungry to prove to everyone, like, hey, don't forget about us. Like, yeah, we had a bad week, but we're back. We are the powerhouse of the NFC along with a couple other teams. And Washington doesn't have Jaden Daniels. So I'm taking Detroit, and I think this is a rout. I think they'll win by more than 7.5. Pittsburgh at the LA Chargers. This will be an upset pick for me. I've got Pittsburgh winning on the road. Pittsburgh's got to string some wins together, especially in weeks where Baltimore looks like they'll get a win. They're playing at Minnesota. Like I said earlier, I picked Baltimore. So if Baltimore gets the win, Pittsburgh needs to get a win, or else that division is slipping by, and they're going to lose grasp of that division. So, and the Chargers, obviously every team needs the win, but the Chargers also lost Joe Alt. And again, we've seen it with the Chargers all season long. When their offensive line is intact, they're great, or good at least. And when they're not, they struggle. And I think this is one of those games where they'll struggle. I got an upset there with Pittsburgh. And last but not least, because this might be the best game of the whole slate, Philly at Green Bay. Green Bay's favored by 1.5. And I'm taking the upset. I'm taking Philly on the road. You know, you might think, okay, Green Bay's got to bounce back. They just had that bad loss to Carolina. They'll prep really hard for this and get everything together. Yeah, well, also Philly needs to prep and get a win as well. And Philly needs to prove that they're, legitimate and not sleeping and, a fake team. I think this will be a statement win if Philly can get it on the road. And I think if they can control the clock and control Green Bay that way and essentially just stop the run and put the game on Jordan Love. Again, Jordan Love may have a career day. He had that a couple weeks ago when they played Pittsburgh. But if you're game planning, you rather put it on Jordan Love's hands than let Green Bay run all over you. So I think Philly's going to stop the run. And then it's a coin toss. Which Jordan Love are we going to get? Are we going to get the Jordan Love who tore up that Pittsburgh Steelers defense? Or are we going to get the Jordan Love who threw into triple coverage against Carolina for an interception? And that's what I don't know, but I don't trust Jordan Love, and that's why I'm picking Philly. So I got Philly closing out the week on Monday Night Football, taking care of business in an upset. Pittsburgh in an upset on the road at LA against the Chargers. We got Detroit getting the win on the road. In Washington, we got Seattle taking care of business against Arizona at home, although it will be closer than what the line says, in my opinion. Houston on an upset taking care of Jacksonville. I got Carolina at home taking care of New Orleans. Tampa Bay at home taking care of New England. We got Cleveland on the road picking up a win against the Jets. We got Baltimore taking care of business in Minnesota against the Vikings. Buffalo on the road taking care of business against Miami. We've got Chicago at home beating the New York Giants. Again, remember, I'm only picking this way. I'm trying to fight the bias. And then in the early morning game in Spain, I got the Colts taking care of business, bouncing back after a bad loss to Pittsburgh and beating Atlanta. Although overseas, I think they do enough and make enough plays to get the job done. This is what this looks like. So those are the games we got. Got to talk a little bit about the trade deadline, which I did not talk about yet to close out this episode. The biggest trade I thought, honestly, was Seattle getting the wide receiver Shaheed from New Orleans, because that guy has had a pretty good season, if you ask me. And the fact that they got another weapon for Sam Darnold, I think is huge. I think it's really going to help them. And I think that they already were a top team, and now they're adding. I mean, he's been the last game they played, he was their leading receiver, Rashid Shaheed. He had 68 yards receiving. For the season, he's got 44 receptions, 500 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's 24th in the league in receiving, right? And there's 32 NFL teams. So receiving yards, he's 24th. Technically, he's if you're in the top 32, those are all technically number one receivers, right? If you look at it that way. So they add him, and he's a speedster. And you add him to go along with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Cooper Kupp's there, don't forget. Now, he can be the number 3. And I just think with how Sam Darnold's been playing, I mean, this guy's going to be a huge help for them. Obviously, the splash trades are, Sauce Gardner getting traded from the Jets over to the Colts, which I think is a good trade in the sense of it's going to help them this year. We'll see about the future draft picks. I don't think I would have done it, because I get it. Also, teams want to believe like, all right, we're hot right now. We're in the Super Bowl window. But I don't take the Colts seriously to be a Super Bowl contender this year. I know they're doing great. But the way I see it is, 2 seasons ago, or was it 3 years now? Look, I'm a Viking fan, and that team was rolling. That team with Kirk Cousins was, I want to say they were 13-4 or something like that. But the whole year, they had crazy wins, like that crazy Buffalo game where Jefferson made the one-handed catch. But then even after they scored to take the lead with 40 seconds left, that defense gave that up so easily to Buffalo, who kicked the field goal. And don't forget, that game went to overtime. And then the Vikings had to make a play in overtime, and the defense got an interception. But that defense was horrible that whole season. And it was only a matter of time before they got exposed. And it was in their first playoff game to the Giants. And my point is, you got to be realistic about, what teams are Super Bowl contenders and which ones are not. And I don't think the Colts are a Super Bowl contender. I get it that Daniel Jones has played much better, but he had a horrible game last week against Pittsburgh. And there's holes. That Sauce Gardner, the defense isn't a top defense. Yes, their offensive line is great. So when I look at it that way, if they get matched up against Buffalo, are we picking the Colts? If they get matched up against Kansas City, are we picking the Colts? Even if they get matched up against New England, are we picking the Colts? So I get it. I mean, but they lost to Pittsburgh, and that's also in the AFC. Are we picking the Colts over the Baltimore Ravens, a healthy Baltimore Ravens squad, if they get their stuff together? So, again, I get it, because maybe you think this is the missing piece, but ultimately, long-term, it's not like you've got a really young team and Sauce Gardner is a second-year player where you're like, no, this guy will be here for the future, for the Super Bowl window 3 years from now. 3 years from now, Jonathan Taylor may not be the Jonathan Taylor that he is today. He won't be. And that's where, those draft picks come into play and are important. So I don't want to call it a mistake. but I don't think it was a very smart trade. I think it's a win now mode trade, and very few teams, in my opinion, should be making win now mode trades like the Philadelphia Eagles, who did that and got a pass rusher from Miami. That is a win now trade for a win now team that I believe was a good trade for them to make. I forget his first name, but Phillips, the defensive end from Miami. So I like what Philly did. Dallas, I don't, same thing. Why are you making these trades right now? Look, like, if you look at, if in the beginning of the season you were telling me, hey, we don't want to pay Micah Parsons, but we're going to trade Micah Parsons for Kenny Clark and for Quinnen Williams and a first round pick, honestly, like, I wouldn't think that trade on the surface is that bad, because you get 3 starters essentially, because you expect the first rounder to at least be a starter. Now, the first round pick is not a starter. That's a complete miss and a bust. But I'm not expecting him to be an elite player, but a starter. So you trade 1 starter, Micah Parsons, or an elite player for 3 starters, plus some cap relief, because even they still have some cap left over from not having to pay Micah Parsons. I don't mind that get back. And I know people are criticizing it, but I don't mind it. And we've seen with Micah Parsons this year with Green Bay, he hasn't been that complete game wrecker, except for that one game against Arizona where he did wreck the game. But other than that, Micah Parsons is fine. But I criticize the timing of the Micah Parsons trade. I think you could have gotten more from a team like Green Bay if you would have waited or done it earlier before the draft. But those trades just, to me, are dumb, because this is not a Super Bowl contending team in the Cowboys. So you're wasting a year of assets, the way I see it, because you get Quinnen Williams in, and now it's just a lost year. With Kenny Clark, like, he's just going to get a year older. I would have rather, instead of Kenny Clark, have gotten just another draft pick, because right now, this window with Dak and even with CeeDee Lamb, he's still younger, CeeDee Lamb, but it just seems like the timing is not right. Like, you always talk about with teams, and when they make trades, do they fit the window that they're in? And the Cowboys are acting like this is their window, and it's not. It's just frankly not. We're not. The Cowboys aren't winning the Super Bowl this year. So again, those were the splash trades, and I thought both of them were kind of win now trades for teams that are not in win now windows. So again, we'll see how it all plays out. But I love what Seattle did, and I love what Philadelphia did, because I do think those 2 teams, at least Philly, is in a win now window. And with Seattle, you can convince yourself that you're in a win now window, and the trade wasn't giving up that much capital. It wasn't like they didn't give up any first round picks or second round picks. They gave up a 3rd and a 4th for Shaheed. And again, Shaheed also will help them right now. He's in this window that they have with Sam Darnold, and we'll see what happens. But they didn't give up that much. So we'll see how it all ends up playing out. But excited for week 10. Excited to watch some JJ McCarthy for me as a Vikings fan. I'm going to wake up excited to see him play, win or lose. Again, my focus is how is he progressing? So I just want to see JJ have a good game. I don't trust the Minnesota defense that much. I trusted them in the beginning of the season, but then they just had too many bad games. The Chargers game was horrible. Justin Herbert threw all over them. And then when he wasn't throwing all over them, he was running all over them. So I don't know why I would expect anything different from Lamar. We'll see how it all plays out. Y'all enjoy Football Sunday. We will recap this next week and talk about some NBA, see what things are going with basketball. And yeah, great sports time. And the weather is finally cooling down and it's nice out. So hope you guys enjoy your weekend and enjoy an NFL Sunday.